And we welcome you into episode 18 of the best podcast available. Welcome to Draft Week, everyone. We are less than 48 hours out from Roger Goodell going to the podium in his basement to make a pick. And the Browns currently sit at pick number 10. I'm Jason Gibbs alongside Andrew Gribble and Nathan Zegura. It is the final BPA before the 2020 NFL Draft, guys. It's currently snowing outside, fantastic weather, just what you want for the last full week in April, Gribbs.
Yeah, I'm just I'm retraining my body clock to be ready for this weekend because I've been early rising to get some work done in the morning, and then I'm passing out at about 8:30 at night. So this is going to be a major adjustment. And I'm usually at the office during the draft, like sitting upright in a chair. This time I'll be on my couch. Like I've got to really adjust a lot of different things to get ready for this weekend.
You got to dig deeper, get yourself a 5-hour energy or something, Gribbs.
I know the coffee's going to be going. It'll be an all-night event at our house here.
Yeah, no panic room. The panic room is out.
I don't need the panic room. Kids will be asleep. We'll be good. We'll be in the comforts of the living room for this one.
All right, coming up on the best podcast available, we will get to the top 5 defensive ends. Finally, we rank the top 5 offensive tackles. A little fun and frivolity, maybe a Gribble nuclear take by the time this is all said and done. But first things first, it is our final mock draft. Gribble has asked us to come up with an entire first-round mock, which we've done now. This is our third one. Our pick for the second round. But then he asked us for all the other draft picks as well. Gribbs, you hate us. It's fine. I get it.
It's a good exercise because I think if any of us get 2 beyond the first round, that is legendary status. I mean, that's immediate. It's Patrick Maxian of 2018 status.
Oh, wow.
What he was able to nail. I think that takes an extra set of skills to guess the way we think things will go. And honestly, because I think the tough thing is, odds are the Browns aren't going to be making all those picks at that exact spot. So I'm just happy if any of us get multiple players beyond the first round.
Yeah, I hope we get some positions right. I mean, kind of in that ballpark. If you nail, in this round they selected that position, I feel that would be a pretty good win as well. But I think it's going to be a very interesting draft for the Browns, and I think Andrew Berry's made it very clear that he's approaching this like we're an expansion team, and that don't be surprised if what everybody thinks the Browns are going to do is not ultimately what they do. It's about bringing in the best players and the best fits for this organization.
All right, let's get down to it then, guys. On our mock drafts, Gribbs, we will start with yours, and we'll go through the top 10 all the way up to the Browns pick at number 10, and then we'll come back and talk second round after we've gone through everybody else's. Obviously, Joe Burrow, the number 1 pick. Can we all agree, guys, as we go through these, Joe Burrow is going to be the number 1 pick. Not even the Bengals can screw this one up.
Correct.
Yes. Easy peasy. I think the first 2 picks, barring without trade scenarios in our top 10, I think the first 2 picks are set in stone.
I think the smoke screen stuff is nonsense. Like, I think the Redskins being open for business, nonsense. I think that's all the pre-draft. Same with this Giants stuff about them taking a quarterback. Like, get it out of here.
Yeah, and that's where I was going, Gribbs. Does anybody believe Washington's going to make a move? I mean, does anybody think that anybody's going to try to move up to number 2? Realistically.
No, I just don't think there's a player worth it that is like, unless a team really wants Chase Young and they're willing to give up the franchise to get him, because the Redskins would obviously love to have Chase Young as well. So that's why 2 is not realistic. The only thing I'll throw out there, even though I just dismissed this about 30 seconds ago, the notion that the Giants would leak the idea that they would draft a quarterback at number 4. Remember when we talked about, the Cardinals would never do that with Kyler Murray. They would never purposely smokescreen to ruin Josh Rosen's confidence. Why isn't that being discussed now with the Daniel Jones stuff? Like, is he in on this, or are they really messing with their QB's confidence to maybe field some offers?
I think that they are I think what they're trying to do is get somebody to go ahead of them, which means that either Akuda or maybe they want Akuda, maybe that's who they covet in this, and they're just trying to slide somebody down. I don't think that I'm sure that he's in on it. I don't think there's any chance they draft a quarterback. I think it's all nonsense, and I don't think Danny Dimes is worried about it there in New York. But it is an interesting thing, and I wonder now if I still kept Tua in my top 10, which we'll see. I don't quite buy all of this that he's going to fall out of the top 10, although a lot of people seem to think that he is, and that if somebody were going up, it's because Miami Dolphins and the Chargers both covet Herbert, which would stun me, but we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. But I think the Giants are just trying to get somebody up there so that Akuda then falls to them at 4.
Yeah. I mean, the draft will start at pick number 3. I think we can all agree this is where things will get very interesting. Gribbs, obviously we didn't do trades in our mock drafts. Too confusing. If everything stays status quo, here are the picks. And you still have Akuda over Isaiah Simmons. You still think that's the best option for Detroit?
Yeah, I think they really need him at the position. I think I think Isaiah Simmons is still a top 10 prospect, but I'm going with teams in this kind of scenario. I think they're going with the safest bet, the surest thing. They know Jeff Okuda is the best cornerback in the draft. They know he's going to play corner in the NFL. Plug him in, ready to go. But I do think their ideal scenario is they don't make this pick. But if they do, I think this is the guy they're going.
Zegura, the chances we see a lot of smoke but no real fire in the next 48 hours leading up to Thursday night.
And I've talked to a few people, and they think that trades are going to be just like they normally would be. It's a matter of if there's somebody that's worth trading up for. You need to have somebody that somebody covets. And I don't know if at 2, 3, 4, if those quarterbacks are going to fit that bill for any of these teams. Now, maybe if you're the Chargers and you do want Herbert, you're going to go to 4. The Giants are still going to get whoever they would have taken at 4 and pick up another asset. So that's what I see happening. But you have to have somebody that they want. And there's got to be a compensation that's worked out. And I think, some of these teams might be willing to more roll the dice on letting the draft fall as it may here in the early rounds, but there are always moves. There are always moves. So we'll see how it plays out.
Here's the thing, though. Do we think that without these player visits, is that there are less like love affairs between a team and a player? Like, can you not fall for a player in the same way that you might have under the old scenario because you had them in your building? You talk to them and the player walks out. You're like, we got to have that guy on this team. That's the person that makes us better. I wonder if that is not in the mix as much this year and you're making more objective decisions.
Yeah, but you also could fall in love with somebody so much on the tape, whereas in the past they come into your building and you're like, oh, I don't know anymore. But in the tape, you love them so much. And I know that happened with somebody very high on the Browns draft board years ago that they absolutely loved and probably would have taken incredibly early. And then after their visit, for whatever reason, they weren't on the board anymore. So I think it can go both ways. It's just going to be, you're going to fall in love with these. And God, these guys are watching so much film. That's all they can do. So they're probably obsessed with some of the people that they see on that. And then you don't have to have any of the other distractions. And so maybe you don't get that emotional, oh, well, I looked into his eyes and I felt his soul and I know that he wants to be a Brown. You're going to have an objective, but you're going to still have the same kind of, I think, infatuations around the league.
All right, we'll get into the tackle side of things a little bit later when we rank our top 5, but you have the first tackle off the board, Gribbs, as Tristan Wirfs from Iowa to the Giants at number 4. A lot of smoke, no fire. At pick number 5, you have Justin Herbert, and this is I've seen this quite a few mocks now coming out that Herbert going over Tua, that the Dolphins who made an attempt to get Tua into their building. I think, did they get Tua in the building before the deadline?
They did.
Okay, it was Dobbins they couldn't get in, I think. So you have Herbert over Tua. Why do you think that?
I'm buying the buzz. I just think that the more I think about it, it's just GMs like safe. And I think that Herbert is safe. I think that Tua has so much upside, but there's just so much. It's not like bust factor. It's just non-availability factor, and that can be just as detrimental. And it's not just the hip injury; it's the other stuff that's kind of piled up. I think there's probably some old school people that are weird about him being left-handed. Like, I think that there's just like a lot there. I still think he has the highest upside, which is why I have the Chargers taking him. I think they have less to lose than the Dolphins do at number 5 because the Dolphins have worked so hard to get themselves in a position to land their franchise quarterback. I just think that all this stuff just makes it too hard for the Dolphins to pull trigger at number 5.
All right, so you have Herbert at 5, Tua at 6. Speaking of safe, can't get any safer than arguably maybe we could call him the best player in this draft. Maybe you can make an argument, but Isaiah Simmons to the Carolina Panthers at number 7.
Yeah, forward-thinking front office, forward-thinking ownership. I think that they are not exactly interested in winning in 2020. You figure out what he can do best in his rookie season, then you're ready to roll in 2021. I think that's, to me, in my top 10, that's what I feel is maybe the most perfect marriage between team and player. Granted, I would like us to be potentially married to Isaiah Simmons, but I just think that makes too much sense for me.
All right, at pick number 8, Andrew Thomas, the second tackle off the board, and going to Arizona to block for Kyler Murray. Number 9 is Jacksonville, and that's where things kind of got tossed around when Jacksonville cut one of their top wide receivers earlier this week, and you have them taking a wide receiver, the number 1 wide receiver off your board, Jerry Jeudy, the wide receiver from Alabama.
Yeah, I just decided to get a little weird. I think that they also have an inclination. If you look back at some of Jacksonville's recent drafts, they kind of like the SEC. They drafted T.J. Yeldon, DJ Chark, the Florida defensive tackle whose name's escaping me a couple years ago. I'm putting 2 and 2 together, and I'm just doing everything I can for them to not take a tackle.
Listen, I had that in my mock 2 versions ago. I had Jeudy going in there. I think it makes sense. I think that they're tanking so that next year they can get the quarterback of the future, and what better way to welcome him in than with already having a very talented and established receiving core waiting for him. And so I think that makes a lot of sense for them, because a receiver is not going to necessarily impact wins and losses, but it sets a foundation for when you bring in Trevor Lawrence, which I think is their plan in 2021, that you've got already his ready-made number 1 receiver. And DJ Chark had a great season last year as well, and that's a nice combo you'd have.
Yeah, it's good. You'll have a receiving core, but we're going to trade your star running back.
Yeah, because he's a plotter, and they don't want that. That's not the modern NFL. Leonard Fournette belongs in a committee where he's kind of the LeGarrette Blunt of a committee. And hasn't been that great. I think obviously he knows what's going on. And I was saying, I don't think there's any more difficult situation than to be a running back on a team where they're tanking. Like, you're going to take 300, 350 hits and get beaten up and take a significant portion of your career away for a team that's not trying to win. I think that would be a very difficult situation. I'm not surprised Leonard Fournette wants out of there. And I don't think he's going to have a huge market, but I think he'd be a very good piece in a team that wants to have some type of a committee backfield as that hammer. And he's better catching the ball than people think, but he's just not he never should have been drafted where he was drafted. And I think that's just the key with the running back position all along. No matter how good they are, it's a declining asset. It's like driving a nice car right off the lot. It's already losing value immediately from the second you get it. So, and if you're picking high, you're not really in a position to win, and the running back's not going to change that. So I think that Leonard Fournette was in a bad situation, but yeah, he's going to be out of there. They're not trying to win. I don't get the sense that this is an organization trying to win football games.
Gibbs, here's a hot Leonard Fournette take. The top 7 running backs in that draft that year, he's the worst one.
I think it's probably true, and I don't even know the other 6 off the top of my head.
I was going to say, do tell me.
I'll go bottom to top. Kareem Hunt.
Yes. Better.
Alvin Kamara.
Better.
Joe Mixon.
Better. Way better.
Alvin Cook.
Way better.
Christian McCaffrey.
Way better.
Wow. Gribble, dropping knowledge.
Yeah.
Migraine and all.
That was a great running back draft. It goes back to that. Again, that's why you don't have to take one that early.
And they took him over Jamal Adams.
Took him over Jamal Adams, and I believe Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson.
Yes.
Yeah.
An egregious pick.
And that is why you are rebuilding. At pick number 9, Jeudy goes to the Jaguars. Cue the ESPN draft chimes. Gribbs. At pick number 10, you have the Browns taking the 3rd tackle off the board. Jedrick Wills from Alabama as the Crimson Tide go back-to-back.
Yeah, and spoiler alert, he's my top-ranked tackle. So I think that this is a great pick for the Browns. And I'm more listening to what Andrew Berry and Paul DePodesta have said over the last couple weeks. And I think that, for me, this pick is about more than 2020. So I think you take the best overall tackle. It might not be about how he adjusts to playing left tackle in year 1, but someone that you can project to be your best left tackle for the next 5+ years. And I just think Wills is so solid. it's a safe pick, even though you're moving positions. I'm fine. I've come to grips with moving him to a different position just because I think he's the best overall and safest pick at that spot, which is what I think the Browns need.
Pretty good. Pretty.
Our top 10s are pretty much the same here, Gibbs.
I was going to say.
I have Derek Brown in mine, and you did not have Derek Brown in yours.
I did
right?
not.
Yeah.
All right. So Zegura, Burrow 1, Chase Young 2, Okudah 3, Wirfs 4. So why? We'll get into that on the tackle side of things. Wirfs 4. You have Tua, though, at 5 ahead of Herbert. What makes you think that?
So I read a report yesterday that the owner of the Dolphins is acting like the team's not into Herbert, which is neither here nor there. But I just feel that when you have 3 first-round picks, psychologically speaking, it makes you feel like, okay, if I need to wait for him to get healthy, I can do that because I'm still going to have 2 other first-rounders joining my roster. I think most people would think he is the more talented quarterback. And so if I'm the Dolphins, yeah, there's an opportunity obviously with what's going on in the AFC East to make a big leap this year, and they played great down the stretch. But I'm willing to wait a little bit of time for Tua to be 100% if he's not already, as opposed to taking a quarterback that might feel safer, but I don't think is as good. So I just kept Tua there, kept Herbert at 6, and kept the quarterbacks that way. We'll see. Again, would it surprise me if Tua falls out of the top 10? No, because that's right now seems to be the strongest narrative that's out there about this draft. Now, if that's being something that's pushed by like evil Bill Belichick who wants to jump up and scoop up Tua and continue his dynasty, well, of course, that makes a lot of sense. But I'm going to, for now, I'll keep Tua there to the Dolphins with 3 first-round picks. Like I said, they have the luxury of waiting for him to be the guy that they expect him to be when they draft him.
Evil Bill Belichick. Interesting.
That's right.
How about you? Well, what is Carolina thinking taking Derek Brown over Isaiah Simmons?
You know, it just could be they want toughness. They want to be stout on the line. That seems to be, you know, you think about all the great Carolina Panthers defenses. That's what it is. And so Derek Brown's considered by many to be a very elite talent. I just had him going there. And then I had the Cardinals, even though you've got Kyler Murray lobbying for a receiver and you know, tackle probably does make a lot of sense. You just can't miss pairing getting Isaiah Simmons on a defense where now you're going to have, you know, Chandler Jones, you're going to have Isaiah Simmons, you're going to have Pat Pete, you're going to have a lot of just top level athletes at all levels of the field. And it just makes a lot of sense. They're going to be able to score points. I think that when you look at the Cardinals, you say, okay, we've got Kyler, we've got DeAndre, we've got Larry Fitzgerald, Christian Kirk, we've got, you know, Kenny and Drake in the backfield. We're going to score. We need to stop people from scoring. And let's get, when you're in a division where you've got to deal with Kittle, you got to deal with Russell Wilson, you got to deal with what the Rams are bringing now, especially with Higbee and the way he emerged. Isaiah Simmons, I think, is just a great chess piece in that particular division for what they have to face and deal with.
Yeah, indeed. All right, so those are your 2 top 10s. I had Burrow at 1.
You didn't just gloss. I don't even talk about my Browns pick. Just gloss right over it. My top 10 ends at pick 8.
I'll get to your pick. Relax.
This is unbelievable.
Nah, don't worry about it.
Those are your top 10s.
Wirfs at 4, Herbert at 5, Tua at 6, Isaiah at 7. I had Wills at 8. I'm not – I don't know. I think Arizona will end up taking him. And Jerry Jeudy, obviously, at number 9. So, Zegura, let's go back to your pick at number 10.
Thank you.
Why do you have Wills at number 10? And clearly, are you dispelling the notion that a right tackle can't move to left tackle and indeed play left tackle?
Yeah, absolutely. And you got Bill Callahan here. He's going to learn the technique from one of the very best in the game, and he's going to go over there. He played right tackle, I believe, and Gribbs, you know, you're more in tune with Alabama, but I think he played right tackle because Tua was left-handed, and they wanted their best pass blocker on his blind side. So I know he hasn't done it. I believe he will be able to do it. In talking with a lot of people, I think the consensus from a big group of people. Now, there are different teams that are going to have all 4 of these guys ranked number 1, and maybe even a surprise team would have somebody like an Austin Jackson up there as well. But I think Wills, he's just the smoothest. I think he's the safest. I've actually heard some people, the opinions on Andrew Thomas I've heard recently are very, very mixed. Some people think he's a very good pass blocker. Others worry about his balance. Dane Brugler's talked about that a lot. Some people get vibes from him that are, I won't even say the name, but former failed draft picks of the Cleveland Browns on the offensive line. So I think you look at Wills, that's the best case scenario if he's there. My rankings now, there are just so many people in that Bob McGinn article we read where the scouts, so many people seem to think Wirfs is more of a guard than a tackle. And so that's why my rankings now, I have Wills 1 and Wirfs 2, which we'll talk about later. Even though he put on an athletic display, there are a lot of people that still feel like, no, he's a guard. And so that's why I ended up going with Wills here. I think Wirfs is going to go early anyway. He seems to be the perfect Gettleman type of fit from the Big Ten. Kirk Ferentz, he's going to be tough. He's going to, he's a stud. I have no problem if Wirfs ends up being the pick for the Browns, but I just went with Wills here with Wirfs off the board. Becton had the issue. I do think there are questions about Thomas, and I do think that we might rather have a trade back and get an Austin Jackson or an Ezra Cleveland than stay at 10 and take an Andrew Thomas, which is not something that I felt earlier in the process, but it's something that seems to be percolating in the air.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I had Andrew Thomas at number 10. I just like Andrew Thomas, and I'm hoping. I feel like it just makes too much sense for him to come to us. I don't think a lot of people have him ranked that high, but if there's already 2 or 3 tackles off the board, he makes perfect sense, and I would be just fine with Andrew Thomas. I'd be fine with Wills, although there's a part of me that is a little concerned about making that move from right tackle to left tackle. But if he's the best tackle in the draft and he's on the board, I think that makes the most sense. So if you take a look at the rest of this draft, if Tua doesn't go at 5 or 6, Gribble, how far does Tua fall?
Wherever the Patriots want to trade up to. That's my going theory. I just don't know what other team is making a move for a quarterback at that point. I don't think the team that drafts him is just going to wait to get him. Like they're like, oh, Tua plopped in our lap, we'll just take him here. So I think someone's going to then make a move to get him. I would still think top half of the first round, and that my power rankings will be 1 New England, 2 Patriots, 3 Pats.
I like that.
Covering all the bases.
I will say this. I really believe that John Gruden would have a tough time passing on him at 12. Now, I know they love Marcus Mariota, and I think Marcus Mariota is ultimately going to supplant Derek Carr there. But I think John Gruden would have a very difficult time passing on Tua at number 12. He might do it. Mike Mayock might do it, but I think that would be a difficult decision for them.
But do you think they just wait for him to plop into the lap? Like that just doesn't happen with quarterbacks. I guess that I would think they'd have to make a move. They would feel like they'd have to make a move to go get him.
So maybe they come to 10. Fine, we'll go back to 12.
Open for business.
Yeah.
All right. Which team, in your eyes, is the better shot to move up? Not the Raiders. Denver or Tampa Bay? Zegura, we'll start with you.
For us to move back?
No, just in general. Which one of those two you think will move up or has the better shot to move up?
So the interesting thing is if we wanted one of those tackles and let's say we move back with Tampa Bay, they're coming up to get a tackle. So I think they're even a team that's been speculated could go to number 9 with the Jacksonville Jaguars to get in front of us to get the tackle that they want. I think they're likely to move up. I don't think the Broncos would be likely to move in front of us. I think they would be likely to move in front of the Jets and the Raiders, both of whom could be looking at wide receivers. So I think the Broncos coming to 10 makes a lot of sense, but I think 9 is where you have to look at. If the Jags are tanking, which I think we're all pretty sure that they are, what do they care if they move out of 9 and get more assets? That seems to be actually a smart thing to do. They've already got 2 1s, and then to move back, collect some more picks, and let somebody come up. I think Tampa going to 9 is definitely a realistic possibility, but I do think Tampa's going to want to keep – they're not going to want to – they maybe give up something for 2021. I don't think that they would be using 2020 picks because I do think they're going to look to try to snag a good running back in that second round and then completely just load up that offense for Tom Brady so they can go to the playoffs.
Gribble?
I think the Bucs, just because they've got an old quarterback. You're in win now mode. Like you just gotta. I mean, you gotta win now. And what are you building picks for? That's what made Brady upset about the Patriots. I mean, they weren't loading up enough. You got to make the quarterback happy and maximize your 1.5 year window here.
All right, Zegura, do the 49ers make a pick at 13? Will they still have that pick on Thursday night?
It seems to be that they're open to moving around and collecting a lot of assets, so we'll see what happens with that. But I'd like them to stay there because I'd like them to take the best receiver on the board there because they can fill the need at 31 with the defensive tackle. Blacklock could be on the board. A lot of people like him to help replace the loss of DeForest Buckner. But I think if they can get a super stud receiver and pair him with Deebo Samuel in that offense with Kittle and those backs, I think that could be dynamic. So I hope that they don't make a move. But look, John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, smart guys. I could see them moving around saying, look, we've got 2 to play with. Maybe they end up moving both of them. They turn 2 players into 4 players that they really like, knowing that they've got some salaries coming up and some expenses that they're open to moving people. Apparently Marquise Goodwin is on the block. Quan Alexander is on the block. And I think for Browns fans who say, oh, well, let's just bring him here and solve our linebacking core. I think if you just pay attention to everything that's happened this offseason, the Browns feel that investment on defense happens in front of the linebackers or behind the linebackers. And so I would not expect that type of a move from the Browns. And that's why also a lot of people think, oh, the Browns maybe take a linebacker in the second round. I would be stunned if that happened.
All right. Time to get into our top 5 positions and top 5 player rankings. We'll start off at the defensive end. We'll save the best for last, the tackles. At number 1, we all have Chase Young. He said he's inviting 10 people. Or he gets to have 9 people in his house on draft night. And then everybody else will be doing drive-ups, as he likes to call it. So they won't have to wait long. He'll be at number 2. At worst, he'll be number 3. If you take a look at the other ones, Gibbs, you had Chasen at number 2 out of LSU. Zegura, you had Gross Matos. You've been riding that train as I think since this whole process started. And I had AJ Epinesa from Iowa at number 2. We're all over the place on the defensive ends. Gibbs, why did you choose the way you did?
Best pass rusher on the best team in college football. Simple as that. And I think the experts seem to agree with me. He's pegged as kind of a mid-round selection. I think it'll just be interesting to see where he goes, because obviously there's a big gap between him and Chase Young, like who pulls the trigger on Chasen. But I think pass rushers, you almost have to expect them to go higher than you think. No one thought Cleveland Farrell was going number 4 last year, but just such a rare – there aren't many humans that can be pass rushers, and you got to jump on them when you can. And I think that's why Chasen, I think he'll end up – there's a chance I think he goes in the first half of the first round.
Yeah, pretty solid indeed. Zegura, you're willing to hang on to Gross Matos. Injury concerns a problem? I mean, will that determine where he gets drafted, or are teams comfortable taking a chance on him in the first round?
He's going to go in the first round, and I don't think there's any way he gets past the Seattle Seahawks. It seems to be a natural fit for them. They've moved on from a couple defensive ends recently. He's long, he's athletic, he's strong, he was productive in the Big Ten. I think Gross Matos is going to be a very solid player. And yeah, he's going to go, I think, in the later part of the first round in the 20s. And that's why I had to take him away from us at 41. Not to mention we've also signed Adrian Claiborne, which I think changes the calculus a little bit there at defensive end. Because even if OV's here in the last year of his deal, you've got now this draft, you have a draft next year, and you have free agency next year to really try to find a long-term solution for Myles Garrett with a running buddy there. So I think the urgency at that position was well down from where it was. Now, do you want to get somebody to maybe push Chad Thomas? I think so. But I think Gross Matos goes in the first round, as I said, in that bottom part of the first round, 20 on. Minnesota could be a place they look, as they move on from Everson Griffin. He'd be a great fit there. So I think he's definitely a first-round talent and a good player. And I think you could end up seeing, when it's all said and done, 3, maybe 4 edges in the first round, but only 1 early, and that's Chase Young.
Gibbs, where would you rank this position in the draft in terms of, like, the most talent?
The most talent, I would say it's middle of the pack. And I think that maybe near the bottom, honestly, the more I think about it, because there's the one super sure thing that only 2 teams have a chance of getting. Then there's a couple other good ones. And then I just think with pass rushers, the problem is there's just a lot of projections. And I think that you're always moving guys. Like, we talk about moving a guy from right tackle to left tackle. It's always like, well, this linebacker's got to play in a 4-3. This 4-3 DN's got to go to play linebacker. And I think that that's why it just makes it a lot of uncertainty. And it seems like this year there's maybe like 3 or 4 that you can feel safe about, with the rest are just projection, high upside, not a ton of just safe picks that you're going to feel great about and making an impact right away.
Yeah, indeed. You take a look at the rest of this. The only other guy that really is the question mark is AJ Empinesa. And there's some questions about him, but I think his talent is there. I think there's some intangibles that are holding some teams back from making this guy a much higher draft pick than maybe he should be, Zegura.
He just doesn't jump off the charts athletically, but he's a very savvy pass rusher, a guy who won with his smarts in college, back-to-back seasons with double-digit sacks at Iowa. And you wonder, is he kind of more a high-motor, productive guy like a Carl Nassib was coming out of Penn State, where he was so productive, who's ended up, by the way, being a very nice, rotational, even starting pass rusher in the NFL. But he doesn't have the upside of a guy like, for example, Terrell Lewis. But if Lewis can't stay healthy, he can't help you. But if he is healthy, he's got the athletic traits to be dominant at this level. Whereas Epinesa, I don't think has those athletic traits, but he's going to be solid, a good starter, and a dependable player for teams. He just doesn't scream, man, I've got to get this guy. He could end up being a 15 sack guy in the NFL.
I think we all can agree after the top four, there's a pretty significant drop off here, going back to what Gribble said about the position as a whole. So
I think it's after the top one, honestly. I think
that's it.
Yeah.
Chase Young, then there's a gap, and Chase On, who is, still a little bit lighter, but a good athlete. I think he and Gross Matos are probably in their own little tier. And then you have a bunch of guys where it could be Epinesa, Uche from Michigan. You've got, as we talked about, Terrell Lewis. There are some other good pass rushers available, but none of them, they all have a lot of questions.
All right, let's get down to it then. Offensive tackles. We all three of us had Jedrick Wills as the number one tackle. No one seems to have any concern about moving from right tackle to left tackle. So the Crimson Tide tackle goes number one. Number two on our list was Tristan Wirfs. And I guess Gibbs, I know what Nathan said about him being a Gettleman guy. Are there any other reasons why this guy ends up being the first tackle off the board when so many people are saying, and there's a groundswell, that maybe he's more of a guard than a tackle?
Yeah, and I don't know if that necessarily matters for some teams. I think for the Browns, who clearly need a left tackle, that matters more than, say, a team like the Giants, who may just be looking for the best overall offensive lineman. And I think there's a lot of people who think that Wirfs has a chance to be the best overall offensive lineman. Look what Quentin Nelson's done with the Colts and the impact he's had. I just don't think for the Browns, he just might not make as much sense if you're thinking he projects as a guard than he would for the Giants, who would be like, well, worst case scenario, he's a great guard and we could use that. So that's why I like him for the Giants.
All right, so at number three, Gribble, you had Andrew Thomas. I had Mekhi Becton. Zegura, you had Mekhi Becton from Louisville. So you're getting into the point now where it's like Becton, Thomas, who's going to be there at pick number 10, knowing that Wirfs is going to be off the board. Maybe Wills will be off the board. Someone, I think, is going to take another tackle somewhere in there. I think we can all agree between 5 and when the Browns pick at 10, there's probably going to be another tackle coming off the board here at some point. But what's the biggest difference between Becton and Andrew Thomas, Gibbs, in your opinion?
I mean, I think the size. I mean, Becton's huge. Yeah, I mean that, and I just think that for Thomas, I think he's a safer pick. I just think there's a couple. For me, I put Becton fourth because just there's the bad tape from 2018, the weight, and then the latest issue with the tests. So to me, they're both really good. They're elite tackles that any other year they might be the top tackle off the board. But for me, if I'm making a first-round investment, especially on the offensive line where safer is usually better than the downside of a total guy you came upon the field, I think they both are going to be good, but I just feel safer with Thomas.
Zegura, you had Becton at number 3. You had Thomas at number 5. Why Becton at number 3?
Well, just the size, the movement skills, what he can do, what he would be asked to do in the wide zone scheme. Joe Thomas is a huge fan of him and actually thinks he's the second best tackle in this draft behind Jedrick Wills. I think you look at the test, the failed test, that's going to push him down. I think it's a good chance he'll be on the board at 10 if the Browns do decide to go that way. Now, you mentioned that was my little bomb right there, my little bombshell, which is just for discussion purposes really more than anything. But I put Thomas at 5, and it was based in large part what Dane Brugler told us on the Browns draft preview show on the Browns radio network this past Monday, and that he said Thomas is very safe, but at the same time, you worry about the balance issues, and you also worry, is he already fully formed? Is this who he is? And now that might not be a bad thing. I think sometimes that's said too much as a negative in the NFL, because what he is a darn good pass protector. But Austin Jackson is 20 years old. Austin Jackson out of USC might be, he said, the most gifted athlete tackle in this class, and has the potential to become the best tackle in this class. And so when I thought about my overall value proposition for the Browns here, it's this. You can pick up an extra asset. You can still get Austin Jackson. And because he's maybe needs a little bit more time, you sign Jason Peters or a Cordy Glenn to a one-year deal. There are a lot of ways to approach this. And then you give Jackson the time to develop, work under Callahan, because I think there's a notion that whoever we pick at tackle has to be plug and play week one. And I don't think that is the case, actually. I think that the Browns have a lot of flexibility in how they want to approach that spot and the development of it. And I just think Jackson's upside is such that I would be very interested in bringing him in here to the Cleveland Browns. I mean, I'll go back. When Lance Zierlein said to me he might be the best wide zone tackle in the NFL in this draft at the Combine, that resonated with me. I trust Lance's opinion of offensive linemen as much as anybody in the league. I don't know anything about him personally, so I go off what other people like that say, what Dane said last night, and just you get a lot of buzz. Daniel Jeremiah on his conference call said the one guy he thinks is going to go higher than anybody's expecting is Austin Jackson. So I'm intrigued by him. Ezra Cleveland's kind of in that same boat. I think he'd follow the same plan with him. But there's some concerns about Andrew Thomas and that he's on the ground so much. And so, again, that's nitpicking for people who know a lot more about this than I. I just thought it'd be fun to put Jackson there and just at least get the discussion going around that avenue.
Gribbs, you did have Ezra Cleveland as number 5 on your tackle list.
Yeah, and again, I'll go with what Nathan said. Let's all pretend none of us here are Joe Thomas. We don't. When it comes to offensive line, we don't know what we're talking about. So I'm going off what other people are saying about Ezra Cleveland. He's another one that I would feel good about the Browns getting if they move back. I feel the same way about Austin Jackson as Nathan does, just not as ranking him as highly. I think both of those guys are good options if you make the move back, because I think 10 still might be a little early for both of them.
Yep.
All right, that's our discussion on the Browns' top position, who we think the Browns will address from a position standpoint in round 1. Going back to our mock drafts in round 2. Oh, you thought I was going to just pass that over like I did Zegura?
Honestly, Gibbs, I thought you totally forgot.
Nope, not at all, my friends. Not at all. We're talking second-round pick. And in our mock drafts, which will debut on clevelandbrowns.com this morning. This morning. Yes, this morning. They will appear. The full mock plus all of the Browns picks in this 2020 NFL draft. We were asked to make predictions. All 3 of us had safety. I'm on the Grant Delpit train.
Oh, man.
I'm on. I still think he's not going to be there, but that's who I went with. Gribbs, you had Jeremy Chin, the safety out of Southern Illinois, who we really like and have talked about as well. Clearly, the position the Browns we think will address in the second round is at the safety spot, Gribbs.
Yeah, he's Nathan's guy, the guy he's been touting. I as I wrote in my write-up for the website, I just can't wrap my head around Grant Delpit being available at 41. I just can't get there. I know it happened with Greedy Williams last year that he magically appeared a little bit later in the second round. I just can't. I can't be that optimistic. It's not in my being. I would love to be that optimistic, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think either one of these guys, you got Jeremy Chin. It's just a different level of competition he played at, but a guy that is getting comparisons to Harrison Smith. Who would our defensive staff be more familiar with than Harrison Smith? And so if they feel that he matches up with what Harrison Smith brought to the Minnesota Vikings for all those years, then I think they're going to run to the podium and get him. I think Delpit's a stud. I mean, I don't understand why he's not going to go in the top 20. So if he's there at 41, I'm going to pounce on him and bring him in. I think he's just that kind of a playmaker. I think his 2018 tape is by far the best safety tape in this class. So I'll go on the fact that we can get him back there. Joe Woods has always been great with defensive backs. Bring him in and see what happens. But I do think that's where we all see the need lining up. Now, the other thing is look, you can get through this season with what we have at safety right now, with Sendejo, with Carl Joseph, and Sheldrick Redwine as your top three. So it's not necessarily that pressing. I think we all feel it just seems to be where the value lines up with a big need for the Browns because, and this is just a bit part of a bigger discussion. What are the other positions we're really going to be targeting in this draft? I mean, I think we think safety and tackle. I think we all would agree on those. Beyond that, it's kind of murky to me because everything that we've done this offseason would signal we're not going to use a valuable, and when I say valuable, I'm going to say a first, second, third round pick, even though I'm going to have us taking a linebacker in the third round. It just doesn't seem to be in line with what we've seen so far from this front office and their valuation of that position. So is it going to be an edge rusher? Well, we brought in Claiborne, like I said before. We've got 2 drafts now, and really a free agency period to address that if we're so inclined with OV here. And it sounds like Olivier Vernon is going to be here and in the plan. So that's not a huge need either. Does wide receiver actually jump up to our third biggest need, knowing that we've got our top 2 guys coming off of surgeries? We don't truly have an established third receiver on this roster, and it is a great draft. Is that maybe where we're going to be going in the third round? And that's just something I'm just throwing out there because other than that, you don't see a lot of needs, which is weird. But at the same time, we do have a lot of needs, obviously, trying to get this team ready for the future, knowing you have so many people on one-year deals on this roster.
Yeah, and
I found myself picking a wide receiver earlier than I thought. And it was mostly because that's just how the board works, especially because we identified linebacker and pass rusher. We agree that's where the Browns need to get better. But that's where it doesn't really match up as well with the pool. Like, what does a project linebacker get you? Where does that get you? Maybe are you better off with doing that? I mean, that's where it gets a little murky for me. So yeah, I went into this exercise thinking I was going to pick one in the 4th round. I ended up picking one in the 3rd round.
Yeah, and I think the Browns will need to be active a little bit in terms of getting into that 4th and 5th round, maybe trying to acquire another pick or 2, hence, the trade back on day 1, because what everybody is saying, there are starters in the 4th and 5th round that can be had this year. That's how deep the draft is in certain positions. So I think that is something that definitely bears watching as we get closer here to Thursday night. All right, time to wrap things up. A little fun and frivolity. Best draft memory. And now it can be working for this franchise. It can be when you were growing up watching the draft, whatever the case might be. Zegura, you're smiling. Zegura, Gribble's in thought. So we'll start with Zegura first on best draft memory.
My best draft memory is probably also the worst draft memory that I have because they are linked. But I was in New York for the 2014 draft. I somehow correctly predicted that we were going to take a corner and then move down. And I did not know, even though I was privy to some things about our draft board, Justin Gilbert at that time was not somebody that was known to be linked to the Browns at all. Nonetheless, he was taken in the top 10. But the euphoria that night in New York, at Music City, and then even out on the streets after when we drafted Johnny was awesome. I mean, it really was. It was the coolest, and we all of a sudden overnight became we were the coolest thing going. Now it's also my worst draft memory because neither one of those guys are even in the NFL anymore and haven't been for some time. But that night, that energy, that atmosphere was so cool, and I think I went to another one that was in Chicago after that, but then, we didn't go to the drafts anymore. So to be there was special. To just that electric atmosphere was special. Unfortunately, just as electric as it was as equally electric of a flop for the Browns. But so it's both my best and my worst.
Gribbs?
Let me give you my worst memory first, because that's always more exciting. The 2012 draft, I covered in New York, covering Alabama. And they had 5 picks in the first round of that draft. And another guy, Courtney Upshaw, who was supposed to go in the first round but did not. Nathan can probably test this. Covering the draft in person is a logistical nightmare. It's truly one of the events. Whenever someone's asked me, is like, should I cover the draft? I always say no. You do it from your home base because it's just a mess. This was back in Radio City Music Hall where they put your computer, your spot in press row, like in the middle of the floor. And I was like seat 46 of 92. So I was literally in the middle. So if I wanted to leave, I had to like scoot myself in front of 45 different people to get into the aisle from where I was set up. It's unorganized. You don't know what's going on. And once you walk away from your computer, you have no idea who's getting picked. They don't really announce it very loud in the building. So it's truly a mess to cover. So that was my worst draft that I've ever covered. It'll be the last one I go to. Do not recommend. My best memory was probably in 2007 when I was a senior in college, watching the draft from my living room with my friends back when the draft used to be on a Saturday
Sure.
at noon, and the Browns are on the clock at number 3, and they go up to the podium, and just as they're about to announce that it's Joe Thomas, I imagine a guy in the crowd who had a few beverages screams out, "Jared Zabransky!" And my friends and I still laugh about that to this day, because it is so funny. And we were big college football fans. We knew exactly who Jared Zabransky was. And then they're like, and the Browns take Joe Thomas. Like, so it was an incredible, the guy's timing was truly incredible. He hit the pause and sound at the perfect moment to let out Jared Zabransky. It was like the ultimate get in the hole moment for a draft fan. And it's still to this day, my friends and I joke about it multiple times.
That draft was absolutely crazy. I can remember I was working at ESPN 850, and we were at an establishment we were at in a yearly tradition, and people were camped out in lawn chairs at like 8 a.m. to get in. We were on the air from like 10 a to 10 p. And I can remember we take Joe. The place where we were at didn't offer us any food, and we're there for 12 hours. So we worked out a trade deal with a local pizza place down the street, and we literally had this van with no windows and a buffet set up inside, and you literally sat on the floor of the van to eat. I finally get a chance to go and grab some food. I'm in the van. People are looking at the van like, there are people coming in and out of this thing all day. What's going on in there? And I'm eating, and all of a sudden I hear our broadcast on the air, and they're like, the logo's changed. The Browns are up. And I'm like, oh my God, we're taking Brady Quinn. I'm trying to get out of the van. I'm currently locked in the van because it doesn't have automatic locks. I'm trying to find the latch. I open the door as the one intern comes out to try to tell me, hey, you got to come inside. We're on the clock. Almost knocked the intern out. I run inside. We pick Quinn. The place goes ballistic. There's a wedding party that has shown up. These people had just gotten married. Their first stop, not pictures, but to the bar. We do rounds of shots with them, get them out, and it was an amazing day. And so
I was there. Do you know that I was on the air for ES? I was there that day.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I put you to work back then, too.
That's right.
Nothing's changed.
Nothing has changed. Now it's just the BPA.
All right. One bold prediction from you guys for the 2020 NFL Draft. Gibbs, we'll start with you.
I think that my bold prediction, this is maybe not so bold, that the Browns end up, even though I do not predict this in the mock draft, that by their third pick, they will have picked 2 offensive players.
Zegura.
I like that. And actually, it's not what I have in mind, but as I sit here, think about it, and we kind of just talked through it, I think I've talked myself into maybe pick number 74 being a wide receiver for this football team, which would give you 2 offensive players out of those first 3 picks, because I think we all assume a tackle is going to be one of them, and then probably a safety would be the other. But yeah, I could see that. And I'm just starting to think that, yeah, maybe wide receiver is something that's going to go a little bit earlier than perhaps we were all expecting here for the Cleveland Browns. And I think at 74, you do have an opportunity to have somebody pretty good potentially be on the board there.
Andrew Berry told us on the Browns draft preview show he was going to be aggressive. I think the Browns picked twice on Thursday night. There's my bold prediction for you.
Wow.
Thursday.
Okay. So what are you coming back into the end of the first round for?
Maybe a
The
guy
safety?
named Grant Delpit.
I don't know if you guys checked out the mock draft roundup on clevelandbrowns.com. Steve Palazzolo of Pro Football Focus, with the 10th pick, the Browns select CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver.
Listen,
it's not out of the realm of possibility.
I will say this, because last night or on Monday night, I pressed General Manager Andrew Berry a little bit about the receiver room. And I said, look, I know this is typically a 2-receiver offense, but, you go through the things. We have the guys who have been injured. Behind them, there isn't anybody that's proven. Tavon Taylor sure was a third-round pick. He's got a lot of speed. Ratley's made some plays here and there. Kadarius Hodge has made some plays. DJ Montgomery showed some things, prior to the actual games being played last year. And, this is a pretty historic receiver draft. I was trying to get it into his head about what, he wants to do with that position. And he, of course, gave nothing because he's so good at that. But at the same time, he basically said, look, people don't have opportunities. But the one interesting thing that he said that was a little bit of a pushback was, yeah, Kevin Stefanski ran that offense with, only 2 receivers on the field so often in Minnesota because of the personnel he had there. And that he could be adaptable to having more, 3 receiver sets and not necessarily be 12 personnel all the time if that's what the talent dictated on the roster. And so that was interesting because I was trying to think back to 2014. It's not like we were playing in the Shanahan offense. We had Taylor Gabriel on the field a ton. It's not like we were playing 2 tight ends all the time, and it was still incredibly productive. So that was just it. Again, it's just another thing that makes me, I don't know about 10. Boy, I mean, the fireworks would be, people would be, I can only imagine the reactions to that. But maybe if you did that at 10 and then you trade back in and you're able to get, an Ezra Cleveland, Austin Jackson, end of the first round. And then in the third round, that's where maybe an Ashton Davis would be there for you or Terrell Burgess out of Utah. You still can get a pretty good safety at that spot. So that would be, I like that. Give me a bomb. Come on. That's why you got 2 bananas back there. You're dropping bombs.
Exactly. Banana for you, banana for you. Episode 18 is in the can. Just a reminder, the first ever Browns virtual draft party coming your way Thursday night at 6 o'clock. We want you to register on the clevelandbrowns.com for that. It'll be airing on the Browns YouTube channel, Facebook page, Twitter. The latest draft news, Dane Brugler is going to join. Zegura is the host of the program. Brugler is going to join. Brad Paisley, country superstar, will make an appearance. As well. Radio coverage all throughout the weekend, brought to you by Speedway. Will be on Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday during the day. News 5 will have you covered with a draft preview show at 7 o'clock on Thursday night, and again Sunday morning to recap things. We're back with you next week. The BPA will roll on, and we'll be talking to some of the newest faces of the Cleveland Browns. You can log on to clevelandbrowns.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Like and subscribe today to the best podcast available. Thanks to Jeff McDaniel for all of his hard work. For Nathan Zegura, for Andrew Gribble, I'm Jason Gibbs. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to the best podcast available.